All right, I believe it's 6 o'clock. We're all here. If you will make sure that your phones are on silence, that'll be appreciated by all. So I'm going to call to order the Granbury City Council regular meeting. It is 6 p.m. Tuesday, February 6, 2024. We're at Granbury City Hall, 116 West Bridge Street in Granbury, Texas, 76048. So I now call the meeting to order. And I want to say thank you for each and every one of you attending. We're going to move right to the invocation, and we have Pastor Mike McMahon of Fellowship Church of Hood County here to give us the good words tonight. If you'll please stand.
Father, in the name of Jesus, we have received your power, ability, your efficiency, and might, because the Holy Spirit has come upon us, and we are your witnesses in Granbury and to the ends of the earth. We fearlessly and confidently and boldly draw near to the throne of grace, so we can receive mercy and find grace in good times for every need. Appropriate help, well timed, coming just when we in Granbury need it. Father, thank you for sending forth your commandments to the earth. Your word runs swiftly throughout Granbury. Your word continues to grow and spread. And Father, we look for the peace and the welfare of Granbury in which you caused us to live. We pray for the welfare of this town, and to do our part by getting involved in it. We'll not let false prophets and diviners who are in our midst deceive us. We pay no attention and attach no significance to their dreams or anything that they would want to destroy, Father. Confuse their tongues. For we've seen violence and strife around us. Holy Spirit, we ask you to visit our town and open the eyes of the people that they may turn from darkness to light, from the power of the devil, so they may receive forgiveness and release from their sins, and a place and portion among those who are consecrated and purified by faith in Jesus. Father, we pray for deliverance and salvation for those who are following the course and the fashion of this world, who are under the sway of the tendency of this present age, following the prince of the power of the air. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We speak to the prince of the power of the air, to the God of this world, who blinds the believers' minds that they should not discern truth. And we command that he leave the heavens above Granbury. Thank you, Father, for the guardian angels assigned to this place who war for us in the heavenlies. In the name of Jesus, we stand victorious over the principality, powers, rulers of the darkness of this world, and spiritual wickedness in high places over Granbury. We ask the Holy Spirit to sweep through the gates of our town and convince the people, and bring demonstration to them about sin and about righteousness, uprightness of heart, and right standing with God, and about judgment. Father, your word says, for I know the thoughts and plans that I have for you, thoughts and plans for welfare and peace and not for evil, to give you hope in your final outcome. By the blessing of the influence of the upright and God's favor, and because of them, Granbury is exalted. In Jesus' name.
Amen. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Pledge of Allegiance to the Texas flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to Texas. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Okay. I can move items up. Let's move this one up. Okay. Sure. Okay. I'll tell you what. There are very few things that a mayor can do, but one of the things he can do is to move things up, down on the agenda as long as we make sure that they're all done. Mr. Mobley, there's no one else signed up, and this would be a good time. Proclamation and presentation, City Council, City Manager to issue encouraging statements. If you would like to come forward, I believe you are, and go ahead and speak.
Tony Mobley, 1505 Chelsea Bay Court. Golly, I was hoping to have another 5 minutes to prepare for this. I just want to stand at this podium and thank the staff. We butted heads 6-8 months ago when I started a project over on Acton Highway. Once we came to an agreement, everything has been fantastic. The planning department, the public works department, if we call about something, or my, and we're real quick to say, this is what's wrong, I just wanted to point out what's right. So in case you ran out of things to compliment your staff about, I wanted to add to that. I'm not saying there's some not work to do, because I sat up there for 6 years, and now I'm embarrassed are still in place, and I certainly don't blame staff. I blame previous councils, and I'm blaming you now. We need to work on some of these things, and something as simple as the landscape ordinances that have been under revision for years, and yet it's still cumbersome. We need to give the staff the ability to work a realistic plan. And just staying on the landscape part, what doesn't make sense is when we have to plant 50 trees, make sure they live, but if we're in a drought, we can't water them. And I don't know how you do that math in your head, but I know how I do. I write a check and pray that, number one, we get rain, and number two, we don't go through a drought where I have to cut everything off the ground. But let's focus on the staff. Like I said, let's give them the tools to make an easier path for these developments to come in. I think you can look at my project over there, which we're trying to do something different, and I don't think it's anything that Granbury is going to be embarrassed of. And although it was on paper, they have to play within the guardrails that you as a council give them. Please give them the latitude to work with the developers and just independent builders. I'm a one out. They never have to listen to me again. And they're probably all glad of that. But the folks that have to deal with this process over and over and over, they're really afraid to say, hey, wait a minute, because they have to come back. So again, give them the tools to work with individuals and developers to make this process easier. And I promise you, if you do that, people will come back to Granbury and build in Granbury, and they will build more things like we're trying to do over there. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we are, there. If you'll silence your watch too. You'll notice that Mr. Kaufman is not here tonight. He is out on a training seminar, and I'm going to ask Mr. Ross here, who will be filling in for him tonight, to explain what our state government has mandated but not funded this time. Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Our city manager, Chris Kaufman, is away attending the Texas Public Power Association annual conference. As you may recall, after the winter storm of 2021, the Public Utilities Commission of Texas and the Electrical Reliable Coalition of Texas, ERCOT, came up with an entire new group of regulations and requirements regarding municipal electric providers like Granbury. Under these new regulations and laws, Chris is the person legally responsible for the city of Granbury's electric utility. Even though our electric system is small, we are advanced in all that we do in compliance matters. Typically, a larger municipal electric utility will have a special administrator that fills these needs for the city, and they earn about what a city manager does. However, we do not have that luxury, so our city manager is where the buck stops for Granbury. And if you were wondering, as the mayor said, yes, this is another unfunded mandate handed down by our state legislature. Chris must receive this training, and yes, the cities in Texas, like Granbury, must fund the training. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. And, you know, when Chris came to me and said, I'm not going to be there, and it's for this reason, I wasn't overly happy, because this is just another unfunded mandate that keeps coming down from our state legislature. So let's move to public comments on agenda items for non-public hearing agenda items. Before I read all of this, Ms. Walker, do we have anyone? We don't have anyone? So let's just move right on to the consent agenda. And all of the items on here are routine. Previously discussed items will be approved with one motion. However, should a member of the city council wish to discuss any item, said item may be removed from the current agenda and considered under the deliberation agenda. Council, anyone want to move anything here? Here? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Vail.
make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
Mr. Overdeer seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. I hear no nays. It passes 6-0, everyone being here. Okay. All right, we're going to jump right into a very important piece of our business. And we're going to go to 7.1. This is a public hearing. We'll hear from staff, questions, then we will open to the public. We want to consider amendments to the land use assumptions, the capital improvement plan, and the water and wastewater impact fees. The study has been presented by Raptilis and Enprotech and Hibbs and Todd on the recommendation of the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager. Rick Crownover, Assistant City Manager. This is a public hearing about the adjustment of the impact fees. We do have our consultant, Angie Flores from Raptilis with us tonight. We have Chris Hay with us with Enprotech, Hibbs and Todd, who was involved in the capital improvement plan, and other staff members accordingly. I'd like to bring Angie up to give a presentation that you've seen before, but this is a public hearing. We're required by law to do that. And then if you would allow me to do so after she finishes the possible questions and answers at the end of her presentation, I'd like to come back and make a few comments from a staff perspective, if you would allow me to do that. So,
Very good.
okay?
Ms. Flores?
Okay, Angie.
Hi, Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm Angie Flores. I'm with Raptilis, and I'll be walking through the impact fee study update presentation. In my presentation, which most of y'all probably heard last month, or in December actually, I'll be going through the impact fee process, walking through the update that we completed with the advisory committee and with EHT, and covering really the basis of the impact fee calculation, which includes the capital improvement plan, the growth projections, and then finally going through the committee recommendations. So the impact fee process, as you may know, the impact fee is a one-time charge that is charged to new development that connects to your system. These are typically builders that pay these impact fees. They are intended to mitigate rate increases to your existing customers. The calculation of the impact fee is governed through Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code, which really stipulates how the impact fee should be calculated, and what the process that you must go through to adopt an impact fee. So the eligible impact fee costs have to be identified first in your capital improvement plan, which I'll cover here shortly. The costs related to your capital projects that are eligible include your construction costs, land acquisition costs, any engineering costs, planning and design, are also eligible costs. Your impact fee cannot be used for repair and replacement, nor can it be used for operations and maintenance. So again, the impact fee law requires, and we refer to the Chapter 395 as the impact fee law, requires that the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee basically review the land use assumptions. And so that's basically the process where we look at all of the land in your service area to determine how it's going to build out, whether it's residential connections, commercial connections, and at what rate that those will build out. Based on those land use assumptions, we then develop the capital improvement plan that represents a 10-year period. And again, that capital improvement plan is important because that really helps define the projects that the impact fee can be used for. One requirement of the impact fee law is that the impact fee study be updated at least every 5 years. In most cases with cities that are seeing the type of growth that Granbury is seeing, we'll often update that impact fee sooner at a rate of about every 2 to 3 years. And that's just because growth is happening, more projects are required. And as well as, here lately, it's really been driven by cost increases in those capital projects. Finally, we walked through an impact fee calculation that considers that capital improvement plan and the projection of how many future connections we're proposing in that 10-year period. So we're here today to have the public hearing, which again is also required under Chapter 395. Through that public hearing requirement, we posted notice 30 days ago about this public hearing. The final report was available for public viewing. And then our process here today is to gain any comments from the public regarding the adoption of the impact fee. In 2019, we presented to you again in a public hearing an amendment to your impact fees that were in place at that time. And at that meeting, we proposed a 3-year assessment of the impact fee. So basically, we calculated the maximum allowable, and you approved stepping up of that impact fee over 3 years. So you can see here in that year 3 table, that is your currently existing impact fee. So again, as part of the process for the impact fee update is defining your service area. This map here shows the water service area that really defines where you can charge that impact fee. So that's important for defining who will pay that impact fee. This is the wastewater service area. So the advisory committee reviewed the land uses. They also reviewed the projected utility demands, which EHT took a look at to determine what that 10-year CIP needed to be. So really it's looking at how much capacity you have in your existing facilities and then determining how much additional capacity you're going to need based on that 10-year growth projection. So we did look at all of that and considered those, the CIP. This table here shows the land use assumptions for your service area. The total acreage remains the same over the 10-year period. Obviously, the changes then occur in your undeveloped land becoming either, one of the other land uses, which are residential or commercial or multifamily. However, the land use projection falls out. We use that those land use assumptions to develop the growth projections over the 10-year period. And again, this is important to determine how many connections are going to pay that impact fee. So you'll see here that, as I mentioned earlier, we do look at your the available capacity that you have in your existing facilities. And we did determine that in your water facilities as well as your wastewater facilities, that there is some capacity available to be used by some of that future growth. And so this table shows the dollar amounts of that that we've included in the impact fee calculation for your water facilities, and these are existing again for your water facilities and your wastewater facilities. This table here represents the capital projects that we've identified to fund future growth beyond the capacity that's available in your existing facilities. You'll notice here that these facilities include your plants, your transmission or interceptor lines, as well as pump stations and lift stations. So your total eligible costs are shown in this table. We've got $193 million of water facilities and about $135 million worth of wastewater facilities that we are showing as eligible costs for your impact fees. So the impact fee calculation, so Chapter 395 does not allow for 100% collection of those costs through the impact fee. There is a requirement to take 50% of the cost per LUE, or living unit equivalent, or calculate a rate credit. Believe in these future. So we go through a process of separating the facilities into function. So for water, we separate those into treatment, pumping, storage, and transmission. And then for wastewater, we separate that by treatment, pumping, and the interceptors. Those impact fees are charged based on meter size. So you'll see here, these tables here, and I'm not going to go into each of the deep detail of these tables, but in these tables is where we've calculated the cost per LUE. And this is before we take that 50% or rate credit. But you'll see there, just as an example on the water treatment, we've determined how many living unit equivalents can be served by the capacity of your water treatment facilities to get to a cost per living unit equivalent. And we go through that process for each of the facility types. This represents your water storage and transmission. And then we do the same for wastewater. Once we determine that cost per LUE, then we go through the process of calculating a rate credit. And that rate credit basically allows us to collect more than 50% of the capital cost through the impact fee. And so you'll see here on this table where we've taken the cost per LUE and then applied the higher of the 50% or the rate credit. That way you really maximize the amount that you can collect from your builders for that future growth, and it really ensures that growth pays for itself. So there's the 50% and then the rate credit, and then you can see where we took the higher of the two numbers. So So as I mentioned earlier, the advisory committee gets to look at all of the pieces of the impact fee study and then make a recommendation to council. The advisory committee recommended a phase-in of the impact fee that you can see here on this slide. And so they recommended that the first phase be effective February of '24, the second phase being in 2025, and then the third phase, which gets to the full maximum allowable impact fee in 27. Is that what we said? Yes, 27. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see that far. Here's the comparison to your neighboring communities. We're showing Cleburne, Weatherford, Benbrook, Amud, as well as Stephenville. Stephenville does not have impact fees. And part of what we're showing here on this table is the calculated maximum allowable that they came up with in their studies, and then the amount that they determined to assess. And obviously, that is an option that is available under Chapter 395 and we always recommend adopting the maximum allowable, but there is an option to assess something less. That's already where we are today. We're on the February 6th. And with that, I'm going to let Rick come back up and talk about the staff recommendations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Mayor, Council, I just want to say, make a few comments about, I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that we're growing at a very alarming clip. And we're remind everybody we are doing that in a building moratorium, and we've gotten very creative in this building moratorium of sustaining development, of working with developers and getting projects on the ground and moving forward at a cost. One thing that I might recommend or bring to mind again is also the fact that while we're always very mindful and thankful for our volunteers on all of our committees, especially the CIAC committee, because this is a tough committee to be on with all the capital improvements and all the millions of dollars and stuff, we're mindful that those are made up of a cross-section of the community, of the developing community and stuff, and we take that into great consideration. But having said that, being in a building moratorium, being mindful of the vesting period, that when you bring a development into the city, if you bring it in, you get vested, and you're vested at that particular rate for the next several years on your project, and whatever rate that happens to be on that given day. So if we take the phase-in recommendation of the CIAC committee that for February 24, staff feels like we could have a run on applications, on development in order to get these lower impact fee rates, possibly. And again, being mindful of our committees and being thankful for all their efforts. And they did a very, very yeoman's job on this, a very, very tough task ahead of them, because if you look, we're almost doubling the impact fees from what they are today. You know, a 3/4 inch meter for a residence is roughly $7,500. And if you take the maximum that would be effective in February 27, it's over $14,600. That's almost double. But having said that, with costs rising, and you all seen the capital improvement plan, and a lot of that capital improvement plan we need on the ground now. We've got plans for them. We need to get after it. But there's also the next big project on the horizon is a water plant. And probably in the next couple of years, we're going to have to start the permitting process, the design process, because that will be next, is we've got to have more water. And the price tag, the estimate today on a 5 MGD water treatment plant is about $100 million. And who's going to pay for that? Where's that going to come from? Is it going to come from rate increases? Is it going to come from debt issuance of obligations to pay for it? Impact fees can certainly pay for it. So having said all of that, I'd like to stand here tonight and make the staff recommendation to you to consider passing the maximum amount tonight going forward for the maximum amount of impact fees allowed by law. That's staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Council, do you have questions here?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
I have a couple of initial questions. First of all, I'm going to go to your last statement. You said you recommend the maximum tonight, not doing the stair-step thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm going to come back and visit that in a minute. My first question was on this 50% or rate credit, and then it's the option B thing that was in there too. The first one, water treatment, the actual cost per LU is $5,700, and the highest was $4,600. So we can't recover all the money anyway, right?
Right. Chapter 395 stipulates that you either have to do the 50% or the rate credit, and you can't recover any more than that. So you'll never get to 100%.
And the rest of that money would just,
Then gets recovered through
we would
rates.
just do that through our regular rates or whatever.
That's correct.
Okay. And if we adopt the maximum tonight, like Rick just suggested, that's not what we actually necessarily charge. What we adopt isn't, I don't know, I'm not saying this very well. We're saying the maximum would be this amount, but we could choose to make it smaller than that if we wanted to. Is that correct?
Right.
Which would make sense with-
I do recommend that you adopt the maximum allowable.
Instead of the stair stepping.
And then assess, no, the amount that you assess should also be kind of considered in the record. The stair step would be, you're adopting the maximum allowable, but then assessing a step
Got
over
it.
time to get to that maximum allowable. Is
Okay.
what the committee recommended. I think what Rick is recommending is that you adopt and assess the maximum allowable.
Okay, and then the other question I guess I had about the possible why to do that is if we adopt like the lower level now, if we stair step it like the committee suggested, if a developer knows the price is going up, like what does a developer have to do to lock in a smaller price? I guess that's my question.
So the impact fee that's charged to the developer is dependent on the time of plat. So whatever impact fee is in place at the time of the recordation of the plat is the impact fee that is then placed on that development.
Okay, so when a developer wants to do a plat, we go through stages with that, an initial plat and then a final, it's stages. At what point is the impact fee locked in?
It's at final plat.
I touched on that when they get their paperwork in. That's when the vesting begins. I'm looking at the city attorney. So,
well, I think arguably that it's at a point on a new development.
yeah.
And so if I were going to develop something, I might just go ahead and follow the development plan now and make the argument that I'm vested as to the impact fee at that point, regardless of whether I file the final plat or not. That's a whole legal argument to go through the processes with, but I would say once I've developed some sort of development plan and I filed that with the city, kind of goes along with, vesting for water rights and wastewater and the same thing. Did I get you?
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Wadley?
And one more, and then I'm going to let this digest a little bit more. I don't like the fact that our rate is basically twice what the people around us were. I was on the council that adopted that last rate increase, and I realize that for a long time, previous councils kind of kicked this one down the road. And so I really like what we did last time, and that was only 3 years ago, and now we're basically doubling it. However, and this is what I've thought about this a lot in going over this agenda item. The folks that already live here shouldn't have to pay for the growth. If you've been here for years and you paid your utility bills all these years, you're paying for what we already have. And this impact fee is because of the growth that's coming. So it seems fair to me for the existing citizens that the growth coming should pay for it. In fact, we had a conversation like this in a meeting with commissioners, and one of them asked me, well, how do you pay for that? And I go, you don't. You don't have budget to pay for all that. So the entity coming in has to pay for it, whether it's engineering or inspections or whatever, which is why we have fees for all that. And it's so that the folks that just live here and pay their rate, it keeps their utility rates down. And I'm seeing all that right, correct, Rick? Okay.
That's correct, yes.
All right, that's my comment.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Other comments, questions?
Mayor,
Mr. Vale?
so thank you very much. A lot of information, big process, lots of calculations and numbers. So the max rate, and then you've got the 3-year step, 24, 25, 27. And in the detail on that, the new water treatment on the north side is 2031, right? And then the other new wastewater would be 2028. So we're actually building in the rates in anticipation of the new facilities coming online. So it looks like we're getting ahead of the construction of those and building the rates prior to that. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are. As I mentioned, Chapter 395 requires the development of a 10-year CIP.
Okay.
But in addition, it requires that the impact fee be updated every 5 years.
Okay.
So, while it's letting you build up the capital, if you will, to prepare for those facilities in the future, but you're going to come back in 5 years and look at this again, if
Okay.
not sooner, and look at that again, because more than likely, that plant that we've got out there in 2028 is either going to be accelerated based on your growth, or the cost is going to also go up. So, it's a process that you're going to continuously look at.
Okay.
But yeah, the requirement is that 10-year CIP.
I mean, and those two pieces alone are $134 million. I mean, I've been here a short period of time, but that is a significant investment versus, what we've already encountered with the wastewater treatment and adding on to the water treatment plant. Just coming back to the other question that Councilman Wadley talked about, what is that gap between like us and Weatherford? What's driving that? Is that just land use that we have coming that they don't have coming?
It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, I don't know, Rick, if you're familiar enough with Weatherford, but it just kind of depends on when they did that last impact fee update, and I believe that they're doing one now, aren't they?
Yeah, Weatherford's updating theirs. Now, also, but learned too, Councilman Bell, that Cleburne is in the process of updating theirs as
Okay.
well. Yeah, and they're behind, so.
Yeah, I think one of the things we all look at, and I think developers do too, is, how how are we being viewed? What's our rate versus our competitive set? And as, Councilman Wadley said, I mean, they are our competitive set. They're in close proximity to where we are, and obviously we want to make sure that, that we're requiring or making sure that we can cover those costs with new developments while keeping in mind how are we with our with our communities that are around us. So that's the only point. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Overdeer.
just two questions real quick. So if we jump into this $14,000 impact fee right away, that's the maximum we can charge? Does that mean that we could conceivably charge less than $14,000, or is that just automatically, if we say it's $14,000, then it's $14,000 to everybody?
If that's what you choose tonight, yes.
Okay.
That's for a three-quarter inch meter, usually a single-family residence.
Okay.
We're
And-
doubling the cost.
Okay, and I should know this because I was on planning and zoning, but the initial plat can certainly be very different from what the final plat is. So if somebody wants to take advantage of this, if we were to not pass this 14,000, if we did this stair-step approach, and somebody wanted to just say, okay, I'm a developer and I want to save that money, submitting an initial plat may not really look like much what the final plat's going to look like, right?
Possibly.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may,
Please.
to piggyback what Rick had said, and Jeremy, the bar is extremely low on meeting the vesting statute. To meet that, it's actually just an application. It can be as little as having a pre-submittal meeting and declaring that your intent is to submit an application for plat. Those are things that would have to get worked out in court of law potentially, depending on where it went. But that's our fear, or our concern, is that, excuse me, developers that would be making a run on the bank effectively and say, and you've got 5 years from the point that you vest, they've got 5 years, then they can do absolutely nothing, and it stays where they started under the statute.
Mr. Corrigan? Mr. Rodriguez? Okay. So, we've talked about this, more than once, for sure. So what I'm hearing is that, and based upon our growth, we could easily be behind today. Okay? And with the growth that's anticipated, and I looked at this and I talked to some of the people that put the numbers together earlier today, this is almost a best case. It is, in other words, this growth could be accelerated.
Yes, it could.
And the only way this gets paid for, and inflation is accelerating.
Right.
So you got more coming, and it's going to come at a higher price. And we're already behind. Okay.
I just want us to be mindful of the cost in the CIP are today's dollars. And that's not going to be the case in a few years. As we know how much costs have gone up on the wastewater treatment plant in the last 5 years.
Right.
They've quadrupled.
And the water plant's coming in, as I recall, this is coming in 6 to 8 years earlier than when we put in this last one was projected.
Right.
I mean, when we projected the need at that point in time, we were pretty aggressive then.
Right.
And these are pretty aggressive numbers that, from a standpoint of population increase, they agree with what comes in from TxDOT, they agree with what comes in from the schools, and then these are independent, and the population things still continue. So, again, a growth in population, higher inflation, so higher demand, and we're already behind. So
5 years ago, we were using 2% and 3% growth projections.
Yeah.
And that's not the case today.
even 2023 is at 2% on the analysis.
We used 3% CPI, I think, each year for those future projects. Was that the, I believe that was the calculation I saw. Is that roughly?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Just, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vail.
Just reiterate, I mean, we had our intergovernmental meeting last week. TxDOT gave their presentation, which we've seen before. what the corridor is going to look like, what Granbury is going to look like, just in terms of growth, commerce, traffic, et cetera. And I think the one word that I took away from that meeting was growth. And that was echoed back from the city, the county, and the school board. And so as the mayor said, I mean, even as we kind of get started with this, we're sort of behind somewhat, and we've got a significant capital expense coming up. I mean, that page scares me when you look at those two numbers at the bottom there between water and wastewater. So, okay. Thank you, guys, very much.
Thank you.
If council doesn't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and open the public meeting. Does anyone want to speak to the public meeting on this? Yes, Mr. Hay, please step up, introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Richard Hafes, 428 Riverbank Lane here in Granbury, and a member of the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. When I made the motion to phase in the rates, it was my belief that the vesting did not happen until the final plat time. And the final plat requires a developer to commit to significant costs for engineering to get to that point. Understanding as I do now, several months later, that the vesting happens earlier, I would not have made the motion that I did in the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, and I would lean towards the full maximum rate effective immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hay. Others? Anyone? I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting. Council, other questions that you might have? No? Do I hear how would I make this motion? There is no motion. This is just a public hearing, conversation on this, okay?
Rick, the plan is to come back on the 20th of February with the action request, is that correct?
My apology, yes, the ordinance will be in the next council meeting and update the fee schedule. Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
could I direct Michael Ross and Rick Crownover just to give us some comparison of the impact fees of going the max amount for like some larger cities or more cities that have a closer to our impact number of the 14,000. You know, what is that in comparison to other cities? I mean, what surrounding cities also charge around that much? That's the kind of information I'm looking for. So if y'all could come up with that information in some type of comparison, that would be helpful for me as well.
Do your consultants possibly have that information? Rick?
I'm not sure.
Expanding some comparables. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you can get some comps on the max impact fee that we are deciding to take decision on in comparison to other cities that have implemented the same amount of impact fees.
At that 14,000 level?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you provide that information?
Yeah, we can expand it to other cities in Texas.
Yeah, and the closer the better in our area, the better it is. Thank you.
Okay.
And we just, of course, need to remember that every city's different in the capital projects and what their needs are, but yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we are a growing touristy type town or city, if you want to call it. I say a town, but
Yeah, and that's what, I can take a look at trying to find cities that are kind of growing like you are currently, to compare from that perspective. So I'll do some research of other
Okay.
cities.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mayor, we were just looking for some general direction to prepare for the 20th, prepare that ordinance from council. If you have that direction for us based on the committee recommendation, the committee chair's change in that regard, and then the staff recommendation, or if we need to if we need to be flexible coming into that. Our hope was, coming out of the public hearing and with council discussion tonight, to head towards preparing an ordinance for the February 20th meeting for your consideration.
Mr. Rodriguez, go ahead.
Mayor, I think from my perspective, I would agree on all of the studying, all the analysis that's been done outside of here, and all the hard work that's been done for the city council. In my opinion, I think we should move towards the max impact fee that's allowed instead of stair-stepping it. And that's my opinion.
Other opinions?
And Mr. Ross, if that's what you're looking for, that's what I recommend also.
Anyone else?
I
Mr.
concur.
Barrett?
Yeah, I feel the same way.
We're not voting.
Yeah.
We're just
Yeah.
getting
The
the general
opinions,
direction.
the opinion appears to be, and the general direction is that you would go to the max fee as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Did I state that, anyone? Disagree, okay.
Just briefly, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
This is for the consultant. I'm just curious, and one other thing before I ask the question. You guys may not know this, but we can't delay this because 395 requires us to vote on this within 30 days after the date of the public hearing, so a decision needs to be made at the next council meeting because we don't have more time to act on this. But my question for the consultant is, I'm trying to wrap my mind around what the council has asked you for, and I'm trying to figure out how are you going to find comparable cities with comparable growth, with comparable fees that are the same now, with the same needs for comparable infrastructure? That seems like an impossibility to me.
Well, we do a lot of impact fee studies, and I'm actually doing one in Corpus, and they had asked us to cast a pretty wide net of comparables. So I think I have some of that data already. I just need to kind of go see all the cities that I have and kind of determine, whether or not some of those fit in kind of the same category, because we have a lot of that data. Obviously, growth is happening all over Texas right now, and there are cities like y'all's that are really starting to see the growth coming your way, and there's a lot of infrastructure needs. So the only problem is probably going to be, it's not going to be exactly the same, but I think I can probably, out of all that data, find at least some that are, having to do these updates on a pretty regular basis because of the fact that they're having so much growth. So I think I probably have those numbers already. That's the only reason I'm saying I think I can get you at least something to look at.
Councilman Rodriguez, are you looking for that information prior to the 20th meeting so you can digest it as we look at the ordinance and make a decision?
Yeah, it's not going to weigh my decision, but I'd like to have that, that information as a comparable.
Okay. So this is a nice-to-know information
Yes,
based
nice
on
to
what
know.
was presented this
Yep.
evening?
Yeah,
Okay,
we can get to work on it, and I can send it over to Rick, and then he can share it with y'all.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Other? Okay. Go to 7.2. I think most of these tonight are public hearings, but want to consider adopting ordinance number 24-05, approving the request of the City of Granbury to amend select sections of the City of Granbury zoning ordinance, Article 1, General Provisions, Section 1.7, Creation of Building Site, and ordinance number 24.0-06 to amend subdivision regulations, Section 1, General Provisions, and Section 2, Procedures. So, Mr. Ross,
I'd like to introduce Kira Wawi, our Community Development Director, for these next few items. Thank you.
So on the subdivision ordinance amendment, we have Craig Farmer, our consultant, here to speak on that item. And you ready?
Ready.
I'll hand it over to him. Thank you.
Mr. Farmer, if you'll introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Craig Farmer, Municipal Planning Services, LLC, and I'm here tonight on two ordinance amendments. The first one is the zoning ordinance, so there would be, public hearing involved on that one as part of the motion. And then the second one is the plating ordinance, and I'll go through that also. In regards to the zoning ordinance, the only reason it's on your agenda tonight is I forgot I have this marvelous little device, is in regards to the creation of a building site. There are three paragraphs at the bottom of the document that are basically exemptions to the plating ordinance. So you've got exemptions to the plating ordinance contained in the zoning ordinance, which makes no sense. So this is merely deleting those three paragraphs and just saying that building permits and the requirements for plating have to be in accordance with the subdivision ordinance, not the zoning ordinance. Any questions on that part? That's the easy part. Okay.
No.
So that brings us along to the subdivision plating ordinance. And all of the parts of this that we're going to be looking at is the sections on plat required, procedure for approval, of the preliminary, final, amending plats, minor plats, development plats, and replating. And I'm going to skip over well, not really skip over it, I'm going to hit the high points, let's phrase it that way. One of the changes is the requirement for a final plat and a record plat, which is some of the other plats, may be approved by the Director of Community Development and the Public Works Director, and both of them have to agree to it. So a lot of the plats you've been seeing in the past would be approved administratively and not go to P&Z and not go to the council. That would shorten somewhere between 1 to 2 months on the approvals of the plat documents. If the directors chose not to approve the final plat or record plat or variances and those sorts of things, then it would go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council. The applicant could request that. So, but the initial approval process would be to the two directors. When it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission actually, or we had recommended that if it involved variances, waivers, and modifications, that it would go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and Council. And the commission actually said, well, why don't we give the normal waivers and modifications to the two directors to approve and thereby expedite it. So so that was, and I'm trying to remember if it's been a while since I've seen this. Let's go back. Anyway, waivers and modifications are also in the version you are seeing before you to be approved by the Director of Public Works and the Community Development Director. The one caveat is there's about 6 conditions as to when those things can be approved and not approved. If it's going to incur a future financial expense for the city, then that has to come to y'all. So if there's fiscals involved in some of those kind of things, then that would still come to you, not necessarily the plat approval, but the approval of the fiscals. Or if there's any obligation in future, as I said, to something that doesn't require a fiscal now, but it's deferring that burden back to the city in the future, then that would have to be looked at. So any questions on that part? That's going to be a big effort to expedite that.
You said that could reduce the time on the process anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks?
Yes, sir. Which is significant. That's a significant reduction. It also reduces workloads for everybody because, there's a lot of work involved in putting these packages together. For the developers as well. Right.
Reduces the workload for them as well.
Workload for the consultants, developers, for the staff. The one thing that the Director of Community Development I talked about was perhaps having some kind of an update in each of your packets as to which plats have been approved and maybe a little bit of a document showing where they're located and what they were, just to keep the commission and y'all informed as to what's being approved and what's going on. So moving along.
Did you have a question? No, I'm good. Okay, go ahead.
One of the things that comes up quite often is the, well, I'm going to pause here. In the document itself, under procedures, section 2.1, we have added a sentence. Basically, this is one that says it's a determination of whether the application was complete. And this ties directly into your question about vesting of plats. The state law has recently been changed, the statute on Chapter 212, and the way it's phrased now, before a city could just about say any document, if you didn't provide, if the city required it and you didn't provide it, then it was not a complete application and they weren't vested. The state, the legislature narrowed that down. But I added a sentence in that statement. Basically, it says that, the determination of a document as to whether it's complete has to meet with the requirements of this ordinance and as provided for in the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 212, as amended. Just a reference that you need to be sure and keep that in mind. The state is limited. To make it simple, you have a certain time frame to make sure all the documents are in. Staff has a certain time frame to review it. If they determine it's not complete, they give you a written list of what's missing, and the developer or the applicant has a certain time frame to make it a complete application. And this sorts out some of the frivolous applications where they didn't provide everything they needed to from the real ones. So we do address vesting to some extent in here.
Good.
Another item that we did, the preliminary plats, most cities, including yours, it was a requirement to have a preliminary plat. On larger developments, you had a few criteria where it was not required. We basically took that to the next level and said the Director of Community Development may require a preliminary plat, gave some criteria, but one of the criteria that's in there is that the director can take a look at the requirement for preliminary plat and say, it doesn't make sense in this case. It's only 12 lots and they're not dedicating a street. We don't need a preliminary plat. We'll just skip over that part of the process. Again, the preliminary plats can also be approved by the Director of Community Development, but there's quite a bit of expense just in preparing a preliminary plat. So that has been made optional, and then criteria have been inserted in there as to when a preliminary plat will or will not be required. That should help streamline the process too. I've worked in a number of cities where they had a preliminary plat and a final plat on the same agenda just to meet the requirements of the ordinance. And if the applicant's willing to go ahead and prepare a final plat and bring it forward, then, why require a preliminary plat? It's another good example. Any questions on that concept? Trying to read what that one says that y'all are looking at. Preliminary plat approvals. When you do have a preliminary plat, as well as your regular plat, the approval timeframes were set at a year with one extension, and we felt like that was not long enough. Quite often, between the preliminary plat and the final plat, people have to go out and obtain financing. Engineering sometimes can take a year or two just to get the engineering worked out. You've got a major development here that had to work out letters of map revision with the Corps of Engineers and other things. All those things take a long time. So the director has the ability to give 3 extensions up to 6 months each. So it can literally take it to 2.5 years, the approval of a preliminary plat remaining valid. We did the same thing basically with the final plat as to how long that approval was valid. And again, sometimes developers have to actually build part of the subdivision before they record the plat and some of those kinds of things. So that gives more flexibility on the timeframes to accomplish these things rather than have to come back and see you. I'm going to mention a couple other things that weren't on this list. We've talked, and there's extensive language in the document you have in front of you about the procedures for approval of the final plat and the minor plats and the amending plats. And I've basically gone over all those that the Director of Community Development and the Director of Public Works can approve them. They can also approve any waivers or modifications subject to those criteria I listed. There is still in here terminology about a variance. Most people doing the subdivision ordinance now prefer to not use the term variance because everybody gets confused with zoning and thinks there has to be a hardship and go to the Board of Adjustments. So if you call it a waiver or a modification or an exception or an alternative method, those kinds of things, then that, people understand that that is in the subdivision ordinance. And if you want to get a modification or a waiver, you go through the subdivision ordinance process, which again here is you'd talk to the director. If the director and the public works director don't approve it, you appeal to the city manager. If he declines to approve it, then the appeal is to y'all, the council. So it's a different process. Replatting is one area where there are certain replats that have to be approved after a public hearing if it's been zoned residential in the previous 5 years. Well, single-family duplex, I should rephrase that. And so that process is still in here in accordance with state statute. And there is one thing that has jumped out at me. One of my attributes is the ability to look at 100 pages and have a paragraph just leap out at me. I am terrible with numbers, which is why they won't let me do those kind of jobs with impact fees and things. But in the, on the very first page of the platting ordinance, which would be page 12 in your document, there's the exemptions listed are 7 exemptions, and the Planning and Zoning Commission actually asked on the 7th exemption listed there. The original ordinance said it was basically used non-conforming rules, and if a building got knocked down less than 50% of the value or damaged less than 50% of the value, then you'd not have to plat the property to repair it up to 50%. The Planning and Zoning Commission at their workshop said, if it's knocked down, why can't they just replace it with the same footprint without having to go through all the expense of platting and doing that sort of thing? So on number 7 there, we actually said you can restore, replace, or reconstruct any commercial or residential building that's been destroyed by fire, explosion, or other casualty, as long as it utilizes the same approximate gross square footage and footprint of the original structure. Okay. So that'll let you put back what got knocked down and damaged. Again, there's other provisions before that where you could make some additions and do some other alterations perhaps, but this at least gives you the ability to absolutely replace a damaged or destroyed structure without having to go through the platting process. But item number 4, what jumped out at me is item number 4 is somehow between Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council, and I will take the hit because I made the amendments after the commission meeting. It pasted in the repeat language of item 3 on exemptions. And item 3 says accessory buildings added in the accessory building or structure meeting the requirements of the ordinance of the city will not require platting, basically. So, you know, if you come in on unplatted land and you've got a building and you want to add an accessory building, as long as you comply with all the accessory building rules, you will not have to plat. Item number 4, the wording on it is supposed to be, and I would like to suggest that if there's a motion to approve this tonight, that added into it would be substitute language on item D of what was originally approved by the commission. D suggests on an unplatted property, okay, all right, to set the stage. D says, adding an accessory building or structure meeting the requirements of an accessory building in the City of Granbury zoning ordinance as amended on an unplatted residential or agricultural zoned but undeveloped parcel, provided it abuts and shares a property line with the parcel with a primary structure and both properties are owned by the same owners. What this is intending to do is if I have an unplatted parcel with my house on it and I own the unplatted parcel next to it, if I want to build a garage for my house on the other parcel, this lets you do that without having to file a plat and go through all that expense. Same thing with agricultural. Quite often, you have a homestead on, I believe it's 2 acres. You have your homestead on 2 acres, and then you've got the rest of your agricultural land next to it. and neither one of them were platted, this would let you put a barn or your other accessory buildings on that other parcel as long as you own both of them. So I would recommend, if there is a motion to approve it, that the substitute language that I just inserted on paragraph 1.5, plat required E3D, be that language. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions. And I apologize for that mistake that some person I know did.
So do you have questions? Yeah.
I don't see that in our document. Do you? You said 1.5E, number 3?
I'm sorry, 1.6.
Or is it 1.6?
6, I'm sorry. Yes, I was using my old document. It's 1.6, I apologize.
Okay.
1.6 exemptions, paragraph F4. Thank you.
All right. Just wanted to make sure that was.
I appreciate it. Yes, that's in the document you're looking at. That would be where the paragraph would be inserted. Paragraph 4.
Okay. Other questions, council? Okay. I'm going to open the public meeting. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to speak on this? I see no one. I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting on that. So, did I understand, sir, that you have a change to 16F4, correct?
4. I recommend the language that I read from the previous version of the subdivision ordinance about adding the accessory building on an abutting piece of property.
Okay.
I could reread it into the record, or I've got it here on this document.
If you will, just, make sure that we get that read into the record correctly with Ms. Walker so that it's handled appropriately. We don't have to come back and do it again.
Yes, sir. It would be section 1.6 exemptions, F, building permits, paragraph, I'm doing it again, 4. No, that's correct. I'm sorry. Paragraph 4 would be amended to read, quote, adding an accessory building or structure meeting the requirements of an accessory building in the City of Granbury zoning ordinance as amended on an unplatted, residentially or agriculture zoned but undeveloped parcel, provided it abuts and shares a property line with the parcel with a primary structure, and both properties are owned by the same owner, parentheses, yes.
Okay, we'll just call it amendment. Okay. Okay.
And I can give this to the city secretary too, to help.
Yeah, if you would. Do I hear any other questions or comments?
Just a comment.
Sure.
I think all of this is great. One of the things we've continued to talk about is time and workload. And as Mr. Mobley pointed out at the beginning of the meeting, it really is given the latitude and flexibility back with city staff to make some of these decisions that don't find its way back to the normal channels that come back to P&Z and city council. So I think it saves a lot of time, and it gets to what Chris has been talking about with the new department that Rick heads up, is a one-stop shop. And I think it really helps, move the process along, both with the developers, which is good news, and I think it starts to streamline the process back. So I think good work.
Thanks, sir. We didn't have the ability to do this before this last legislature, and one of the things we negotiated was the ability to have staff or designated people approve these plats as part of that process. So, and I think you'll be one of the first cities in the state to do this, for the record.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to adopt ordinance number 24-05?
So moved.
Second.
Let me finish that with the caveat that Mr. Farmer provide a written copy of the amendment to the amendment to our, yeah. Okay, so 6 as the amendment, okay. So do I hear a motion, to adopt ordinance number 24-05? Mr. Vale makes the motion? Oh, I thought we had it.
Did we do the public hearing?
Mr. Overture made a second.
But we did not do the public hearing? Okay. Told you so. All right, so do I have a motion to approve ordinance number 2405, and I have a second on that? Skip made the second? Yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. So ordinance number 2405 is approved, 6-0. Now, do I have a motion to approve 2406 to amend the subdivision regulations and the amendment as proposed by Mr. Foreman, who will provide us a written copy?
So moved.
Mr. Corrigan makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Wadley seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Those pass 6-0. So that'll be 4 to 8 weeks of reduced time for someone, and a lot of effort at this end. So thank you. Thank you all. And we're not through yet, right? We have more?
More work to do.
More work to do. Yeah. Okay. Moving to 7.3. Consider adopting ordinance number 24-07, approving the request of the City of Granbury to amend the thoroughfare plan contained within the 2016 comprehensive plan. Ms. Garrett, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. Thank you. So before you, we have our location map. This is the city's thoroughfare plan, and I've outlined in blue the generalized area of this request to remove a portion of Davis Road from the thoroughfare plan. So there we have a little bit of a zoom in. The location of Davis Road proposed for removal is between Highway 377 and Old Granbury Road. Now move into a little bit closer. What I was showing you on those, let me back up and give a little better understanding what a thoroughfare plan is. Thoroughfare plan is a generalized plan that gives an indication of the location of certain streets in the city and their capacity, and that means just their size, whether they're wider than one another or more narrow. So zooming in a little bit closer now, this property, that the existing recommendation for Davis Road would extend from Highway 377 to Old Granbury Road, and is generally located on an alignment where there's existing buildings that are currently in use. There's a city facility and a little bit of grade change between properties. This makes it difficult to install the street properly. And this property also is the next item. The property on the left side or the west of the yellow line where Davis Road alignment would be is a subject of the plat, which is the next item on your agenda. But there's a building on that property that would be a little bit compromised if we put the road through. And considerations that I've generally went over is it would need to be purchased, the right-of-way would need to be purchased, and the result of that would result in a long, narrow, and potentially undevelopable property. So when we look at those factors, we conclude that it would be in the best interest of the city to remove that segment from the thoroughfare plan. Public notice is not required, and what is required is publishing in the Hood County News, and we did so. The Planning Commission recommendation was in favor with a 5-0 unanimous vote, and staff is recommending approval also. Your voting options are to approve or to deny the thoroughfare plan amendment. If denied, then the next item on the agenda would need to be a denial. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council, questions? No questions, I'll open the public meeting. Anyone want to speak? I see no one would like to speak. Council,
Yeah.
Mr. Wadley?
Kira, what prompted this? I'm just curious.
Primarily, the review of the project prompted the proposal to remove. We looked at the criteria that I mentioned, the ability to have the property develop, as well as the impacts that the thoroughfare would have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the public meeting was open and closed. No one chose to speak. Other questions here? Do I hear a motion to adopt ordinance number 2407, approving the request of the City of Granbury to amend the thoroughfare plan contained within the 2016 comprehensive plan? Mr. Rodriguez.
Mayor, I make the motion to approve the thoroughfare amendments.
Motion has been made to approve. Do I hear a second? Mr. Corrigan seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. It will pass 6-0. Okay. Let's move to number 7.4, also a public hearing. Consider a request of Brian Gaffin to preliminary plat 1.390 acres of the John Stokely Survey Abstract number 523 as Lot 1, Block 1, Double Diamond Addition, located at 2118 East US Highway 377. Ms. Wawi?
Thank you. This is a location map of the site there. It's outlined in teal. It has frontage on both Old Granbury Road as well as Highway 377. The site is zoned heavy commercial. This would be the first time for platting of this property, and there is some building on the property that would be repurposed for a medical office. The requirements of the zoning ordinance with the platting would be met. This is a depiction of the preliminary plat drawing. I clipped it from the overall preliminary plat, but it shows fire lane that kind of traverses the site in an S shape. The fire lane is positioned to accommodate future parking needs and as well as the existing building on the property. And this is the utility plan that helps us to establish the facts and settle on the preliminary plat layout. There were variances requested for this property, or this preliminary plat. First is to not extend a water line across the street frontage of the development. Likewise, to not extend a wastewater collection line and not improve streets to urban street standards. And those are all pretty standard right now for variance requests. The variance request for not installing street lights applies to the Old Granbury Road side of this site. And we find that an acceptable variance. The DRC, as well as the city engineer, has reviewed that, and the city engineer recommends approval of the variance, provided that when that portion that's to the north, that portion of the property that's on the north side, when that develops, then the streetlights should be installed at that point. And this is established in the city engineer's memo that's on your screen now. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the variances as well as the preliminary plat. Staff has the same recommendation, and these are your voting options on the screen. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay. Council, questions?
Mayor.
Mr. Vail.
So the reason for the conditional approvals was for the street light on the north side when the project's completed, okay?
Correct.
And then the wastewater is a moratorium development agreement that just says we're going to have an on-site system until we lift the moratorium, and then they're going to connect back to the wastewater treatment for the city,
Right,
correct?
right,
Okay.
and then they do have some small connection, but they have an agreement, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Kira.
Other questions? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public meeting. Does anyone want to speak on this matter? I see no one. So I'm going to close the public meeting. Do I hear a motion to preliminary plat 1.390 acres of the John Stokely Survey, abstract number 523, as Lot 1, Block 1, Double Diamond Addition, located at 2118 East US Highway 377?
Mayor,
Mr. Rodriguez,
I'll start with the variances. I approve the variances.
you make a motion to
I
approve
make
the
the motion to
variances?
approve the variances, as stated in the documentation.
I second that.
Mr. Wadley seconds. All in favor to approve the variances, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. I hear no nays. The variance is approved at 6.0.
Mayor,
Mr. Rodriguez,
I make the motion to approve the preliminary plat, as stated.
I hear a second.
Second.
Mr. Vale seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay. So it is approved 6-0. Thank you. Okay. 7.5, consider adopting ordinance number 2308, approving the request of Kelly Clark for a specific use permit for an amusement center, commercial outdoor temporary. The item also provides for procedural compliance for outdoor events with animals on the city beach per section 1.04.002.f.2 of the City of Granbury Code of Ordinances. The property is located at 505 East Pearl Street. Mr. Ross, did you have a comment? Did we have a photo that we were going to show at this time? There we go.
This is a continuation of Kira Wawi's show. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. Yeah, we put those pictures at the end of the presentation slides, and I'll just pause on, whoops, went too far. Just pause on these. This is an annual event that takes place on the city beach. They are here, I believe, yeah, with us this evening, and it's an event that seems to draw quite a degree of attention. Let me get back to my first slides here, and there we go. So its location is on the city beach, and I have a closer up drawing of exactly where the event takes place. The SUP is based on a one-year term. We haven't had any problems reported by the police or security. So it's a good event for the community. Its site is zoned light commercial and requires a SUP, a specific use permit. It's been running since 2016. I think there was 1 year during COVID that they had to cancel it in 2020. This is the site plan. We sketched up an aerial to kind of give you an idea exactly where the location is on the beach. So that's where that red outline is. That's where they'll be conducting their bull riding. The zoning ordinance has certain criteria that needs to be determined for the validity of the SUP request. Generally, we find that the use has been in the past, and this proposal is no different from the other requests, so it would be harmonious and compatible with surrounding area. The activities requested in the application are normally associated with the use as in the zoning ordinance. The nature of the use seems to be reasonable. It's been active for several years. The proposed event would have limited impacts, and it is temporary, so it doesn't run that long as to have mitigating concerns. We did provide public notice. We sent out 10 notices within 200 feet. We also sent to the newspaper ad. We've received no input either in favor nor in opposition to the request. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the SUP. There are conditions contained in your packet. And staff recommendation, Planning and Zoning has the same conditions recommended as staff does. Staff recommends approval with operations and conformance with the site plan. And the two other conditions are per the city code and ordinance requirements. And I would remind the city council that this does require a 3/4 vote to approve, since the city code requires signatures from the neighbors within 300 feet of a residential zone property and 500 feet of a public address system. The signatures were not acquired, and that's the cause for the 3/4 vote. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions? It was noted in the photo that you have there of the guy in the barrel. If you'll notice that that has a Visit Granbury logo. It's wrapped in a Visit Granbury, and that is the barrel that he uses in how many rodeos around the, do you recall?
I
There's
don't know.
multiple numbers. It's a large number. Oh, Tammy? Yeah, how many?
I'm hearing about 12.
A dozen? 12? That's a dozen, yeah.
It's our NASCAR.
Right. And it gets a lot of publicity for Granbury, but this is the only one on the beach that we have. Kara, in the past, I've heard the question asked about insurance. I didn't see anything in the ordinance here that requires that, but
So it's my understanding insurance is required?
Yes.
I would be able to provide that, yes.
$2 billion this time? Okay. Great. Great. Okay. All right. Questions? I'm going to open the public hearing.
Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Corrigan. No, go ahead.
Well, I just, my only question was, what's the age limit on the Mutton Mustang?
55 pounds or less. We'll take everything from embryo up to 55 pounds.
Good, I've got two for you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm almost hesitant to ask for a public meeting at this time, or open the public comments. Any public comments? Anyone want to step forward? Okay. We'll close that public meeting. Are there other questions from council? I didn't think so.
Mayor, I just got a comment.
Yes.
I just want to say it's always a pleasure to have an organization that spreads not only the advertisement of City of Granbury, but also advertises on our behalf in other places and other locations. It's a great partnership with this organization, and every time they come to Granbury, I've never heard of any complaints afterwards. They always set up nicely, they always break down nicely, and they leave the beach probably cleaner than what we had it before they started. So I just want to say to the organization, thank you for making Granbury appear beautiful. Thank you for bringing your business.
Absolutely. Other comments or questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt ordinance number 23-08, approving, go ahead. Did you make a motion, Mr. Weather? 2408? I have 2308.
So moved as presented.
Second.
Oh, you're on 7-6, okay. It's 2408. Do I hear a motion to approve ordinance number 24.08, which approves the request of Kelly Clark for a specific use permit for an amusement center, commercial, outdoor, temporary. The item also provides for procedural compliance for outdoor events with animals on the city beach per section 1.04.002.f.2 of the City of Granbury Code of Ordinances. The property is located at 505 East Pearl Street.
So moved again.
Mr. Wadley makes a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Oberdehr makes a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. It will pass 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay. All right, we have another public hearing. It's consider the following request of Case Spears to, 1, adopt ordinance number 2409, amending the future land use map contained within the 2016 comprehensive plan from low-density residential to retail office, and number 2, adopt ordinance number 2410, with approving a rezone from R12 Residential District to Light Commercial. Property is located at 505 South Morgan Street. Ms. Wally?
Thank you.
This is, did we all need to be here tonight for her? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is your location map. The site is located there on Morgan Street, and it's outlined in teal. There's an existing single-family residential structure on the property. The applicant proposes to change the comprehensive plan land use element and rezone from R12 residential to light commercial. This is a colored drawing of the future land use plan. The existing recommendation is low-density residential, that's that bright yellow color. And the proposed land use category is retail office. Retail office is pretty much what the name says. It offers locations for retail and office activities. There's a little bit of history on this site. In 2018, the future land use plan was amended to low-density residential, and there was an accompanying zone change, so the two are coming back to you today to reverse that from the low-density residential back to retail office, and the zoning we'll look at here in a second. But first, let's go over the considerations for a future land use plan amendment. There are 5 on this slide, and the first is, will the proposal enhance the site and the surrounding area? Well, what this will do is align the land use designations along Morgan Street, which would enhance consistency in land use along that corridor. The infrastructure is in place. Facilities would provide, the change would provide additional commercial inventory in the city, and the proposed designation is intended as a buffer between commercial and residential uses, so the designation for retail office is compatible to the area. We don't anticipate any negative impacts. And additionally, on the uses adjacent to the proposed, are they similar in nature? The uses along Morgan Street are similar, and the property to the north extends the same distance back from Morgan towards the east. And here are a few more considerations for the future land use map. First was the property. It has frontage along the major street and could be considered underutilized without it being commercial. The proposal, again, would increase the contribution of commercial uses to the community. And would it contribute to the long-term economic well-being of the community? The short answer is yes, and it would add to the mix of uses and contribute and enhance the economic stability of the community. So based on this analysis, the land use request would be supported. This is the zoning part of our presentation. The existing single-family residential R12 property has an existing single-family dwelling. Seems to be a little bit underutilized. The light commercial district offers office, retail, restaurants, and uses that are intended to be compatible with residential areas. And there's our zoning history again from a couple years back. There are zoning considerations that should be taken into account. These come from the zoning ordinance. The first is compatibility. I think I just kind of went over that, but in a different flavor for the future land use plan amendment. This is regarding zoning, and the uses of the light commercial district are normally associated along streets that back onto residential properties. The infrastructure for the site is in place, and it does not appear to create additional school demand. This would be a small increase in the overall supply of commercial land in the city. And the properties along Morgan Street are already zoned light commercial. There's a little bit of a mix with business commercial as well. The proposal would again increase the light commercial mix. And regarding public notice, we did satisfy the requirements of public notice through the mail as well as the newspaper, and we received nothing in response. Planning Commission recommended approval of both applications, the future land use amendment as well as the zoning change. Staff has the same recommendation. These are your voting options, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions? No? I'm going to go ahead and open the public meeting. And now I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting. I see no one rising to speak. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Wadley.
Carrie, is there already a proposed use for this building?
I would need to defer to the applicant. I'm not sure exactly what the particular use is.
So they would have to come and put in parking and all that kind of,
Yes, they would need to make a parking improvements property and very likely do some type of renovation to the residential building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you. Okay. We have two amendments here. Consider approve the ordinance number 2409, amending the future land use map contained within the 2016 comprehensive plan from low-density residential to retail office. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Bale?
make a motion to approve ordinance 2409, approving the future land use amendment.
Second.
Second, Mr. Corrigan seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. 2409 will pass 6-0. 24010, adopt ordinance number 24-10, approving a rezone from R12 residential district to light commercial. Do I hear a motion?
so moved.
Mr. Wadley makes a motion,
Second.
and Mr. Rodriguez
Second.
makes a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. I hear no nays. It is approved 6-0. Thank you. Go to 7.7, also a public hearing. Consider adopting ordinance number 24-11, approving the request of Stephen Binkley for a specific use permit for auto sales, used and auto repair, major uses in heavy commercial zoning. The property is located at 4301 East Highway 377. Ms. Wawi?
Thank you. This is our location map. This site is outlined in teal. The existing property is a automobile dealership. The cause for this SUP is to allow the construction of an additional building on the site, and the purpose is auto sales, new and used, as well as automobile repair major, and of course with a dealership you have minor repair that's already allowed on the property. There was a 2009 SUP for auto sales and minor auto repair, so this serves to update that prior SUP and allow the continued and legal use to continue on the site. The request, I said, was to build a new building, and the existing use will continue. Okay. This slide shows the existing zoning on the site. That's the heavy commercial. That's the dark red color. The pink is light commercial. This is the proposed site plan. It is the lot with the most lines on it. That site plan has a dark-colored circle shape that is the access for the property. They will run an access to the road there to the north being on the right on this drawing. That's east, sorry. To the right is east, north is up on the drawing. That access is running through an adjacent property and is allowed as an access drive on the adjacent property. It's not part of this SUP request. And the circle surrounds the proposed new building for the development. So you can see the 3 buildings to the east of the property and a brand-new one there on the west side of the property. I wanted to also mention, when I was speaking about the access, that will allow the delivery of vehicles with semi-trucks to come off of 377, make those a little easier for the property owner. The SUP has the same criteria for decision-making as we went through in the other applications, and the use is existing. This would be allowing the use to conform with the ordinance and add that one sales building. The request is automobile sales and auto repair. It's normal to the requested use. The use is reasonable in context with surrounding properties. and the use history of the subject property. It does not appear to introduce new impacts and will improve the character of the community with the new building. And these are SUP regulations. The use itself appears to be harmonious and compatible, adaptable to buildings and uses that are already there, and again, with that new building, it will contribute. The streets and infrastructure are all already developed. Conditions may be recommended. Those are part of our recommendation. And the remaining of these are more performance, if you will, of these criteria. So we did mail out 11 public notices to property owners, and we also published in the newspaper. We haven't received any input in any way. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval subject to the conditions presented by staff. Staff recommends approval as well. All operations and improvements to conform to the site plan, which is the exhibit in your report. And the other two conditions are standard regarding city code and violation in terms of the SUP. So here are your voting options, and again, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Are there questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vail.
So, Kier, so they're going to construct a new building, so for auto sales. So I would imagine the auto sales is going to have some restrooms in that. Does that affect anything having to do with our moratorium on wastewater?
So if it had, we would have
What's in the
already.
building?
Sorry?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. If it had, we should have already been through a moratorium agreement, and we don't have one that I'm aware of, and so what that indicates is that the property meets the standards and requirements. The property is also already platted, so it would have been accounted for.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Kira.
Other questions? Okay. I'll open a public hearing on this for anyone that wants to speak. See no one that is coming to the dais, so I am closing the public hearing. Other questions, anybody? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the SUP subject to conditions as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Oberdauer makes a motion.
Second.
Mr. Vail seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. I hear no nays. It passes 6-0. Thank you. Number 7.8, consider approving amendment number 2 to the Facilities Improvement Agreement, FIA 21-03, between the City of Granbury and 144 residences to extend the time of the agreement for 6 months. Mr. Ross.
I believe this is our Public Works Director, Chester Nolan. Thank you, Chester.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This particular request is to finish out the facilities that are necessary for construction of residences at 144. This is across the street from Stumpy's Restaurant. Most recently, there has been a finding of a gas line, a 6-inch gas line that traversed the property, and so consequently is holding up the construction of any permanent residences on the property. It's my understanding that the owners of the property and Atmos have worked out an agreement, and they're going to relocate that gas line, so when that's complete, then they'll be able to move forward with the construction of residences at that property and be able to get permits for that construction. That's pretty simple. It's just an extension of time to finish out the infrastructure portion of their agreement and get it done. Recommend approval.
Questions?
Mayor.
Yes, Mr.
I
Vail.
just got to ask a question. So how was that gas line not detected on some kind of survey or map or
It should have
something?
been, Commissioner.
Wow.
it got overlooked by their surveyor, and that was, it was later discovered.
I was just thinking about all the infrastructure that's gone in there with
You would think-
equipment and a lot of digging around, and thank God we didn't, well, the fire department's here anyway, so.
It's a wonder they didn't hit it
But it's-
previously.
yeah, it's surprisingly that we didn't have a gas leak there.
It traversed 4 lots, almost dissected them
Yeah.
from corner to corner.
Yeah.
And so the reason, I don't know how they managed to miss it, but they did.
So is
So-
Atmos responsible for moving that?
I don't know if they're necessarily
Okay.
responsible
It's
for
gotta
it,
get
but they
moved
have
in any
reached,
event.
it's my understanding they have reached an agreement,
got you.
and Atmos
Okay.
is going to do that.
Good, well, in my opinion, I want to continue to support the project and get it to completion, so. All right, thanks, Chester.
Yes, sir.
There was a question earlier about, with this extension, do we have bonds that also?
The maintenance bond and performance bonds will come after that. Once we get this part of it, then we'll have a maintenance bond, and they will submit that, and it should move everything forward for them.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? Okay. All in favor of approving amendment number 2 to the Facilities Improvement Agreement FIA 21-03 between the City of Granbury and 144 residents to extend the time of agreement for 6 months? Did I hear a motion, Mr. Vale?
So moved.
Mr. Vale makes a motion. Mr. Overdeer seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That will pass 6-0. Okay. 7.9, consider approving amendment number 1 to the Facilities Improvement Agreement FIA 21-06 between the City of Granbury and residences at Cardinal Woods LLC to extend to the time of the agreement for 1 year. Is this you
Mr.
again?
Mayor,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, members of the council, the Cardinal Woods is across the road from Kroger out on the FM4. They're requesting a 1-year extension. Part of the reason for their request for the extension is there is an EPA requirement and a state law that requires the developer to put sidewalks in place, and they must be examined and certified by an ADA examiner, and there was a little bit of consternation about getting that done, but we've come to an agreement on it, and that's going to be done, but they need an extension of the time, so we're asking, or they're asking for a 1-year extension, and we agree with that and recommend it.
Questions? No questions? Do I hear a motion to approve amendment number 1 to the Facilities Improvement Agreement FIA 21-06 between the City of Granbury and the residences at Cardinal Woods LLC to extend the time of the agreement for 1 year?
So moved.
Mr. Wadley makes a motion.
Second.
Mr. Corrigan seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That will pass 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. 7.1, consider approving a change order with Lever Construction to the Granbury Terminal Building Construction Project in an amount not to exceed $125,000. Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Mayor. Council may recall in 2022, when we first began the terminal building project at the airport, the pricing was coming in higher than our budget at the time, and we made some cost cuts hoping to bring that price down with that contractor, Christensen, at the time. And at the end of the day, we were unable to get it to a point with that contractor to move on. And so we went out for competitive bids instead of the alternative CMAR method of contracting, and eventually had a contractor. Of course, that contractor's departed. We now have a new contractor. The project is moving along very well. Some of those cost-cutting measures, 2 in particular, one being the metal seam roof that was in the original project, is really an important component to the building for longevity, as well as to protect the structure better. than the standard asphalt, residential grade asphalt shingles, which is what's currently in the project. So we're recommending to use the contingency council approved and pay for the change up to $60,000. And we have an attached breakdown from the contractor on that. And then we're also asking for council to consider removing the additional earthwork, or doing the additional earthwork to remove the mound adjacent to what will be the parking lot for the terminal building, bring that down to a level grade at the pavement elevation to the parking lot. It will look much better. It will also be ready for the future when the time comes for any extension of parking or any other type of construction that's needed, since it'll be a level surface. We have a not-to-exceed number for $65,000 for that one, for a total of a not-to-exceed number of $125,000. We also have the breakdown. We got it a little bit late, but we have the breakdown. You should have that as well for the earthwork from the contractor. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions?
Michael?
Mr. Bale?
Yes.
I'm happy to see going back to the original design of the metal building, or the metal roof. I mean, that's what we have with the current FBO today. And I was just thinking about, all the asphalt shingle houses that we have in our community. March is coming, there's usually hail. I think the last thing we need to do, if we can avoid it, is have another building, the city's responsible for having to replace the roof. So I think that's a great move. How big is, and I was trying to remember, how big is that area where you're talking about removing that mound of, it's probably rock too, right?
There's quite a bit
Yeah,
of
because that was
rock
the whole
there.
area that the quarry was at. I
It's
think.
probably 3 to 4 foot higher than the existing
Okay.
parking lot area.
So that will be taken out, graded, and then when we get to the point, we can come in and pave it, and that would be overflow parking for the FBO, right?
It
Okay.
very well could be, yes, sir.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Does someone else have a question here? Mr. Wadley?
Yeah, I was going to make a comment about the metal roof, but Stephen said basically what I was going to. I replaced an asphalt roof at my office with a metal roof for the appearance and the longevity, and to do it without spending money on an asphalt roof first makes all kinds of sense. So it's a great idea.
Good. Council, other questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the change order with Lever Construction to the Granbury Terminal Building Construction Project in the amount not to exceed $125,000?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Bale?
I make a motion to
Make a
approve
move.
the change order as written.
Do I hear a second? Second. Mr. Wadley, Mr. Corrigan, second. Mr. Corrigan, second. Mr. Bale made the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That will pass 6-0. Now going to another public hearing. Consider a property tax abatement agreement for the Commerce Center of Granbury, a speculative building project, and authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute the agreement with the consent of the TERS Board of Directors, which will be the meeting we will open up immediately after we discuss this agenda here.
Lance.
And this is a public hearing, so
I'd like to introduce Lance LaCour, our Economic Development Director. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and council members, you considered and approved designation of a tax abatement reinvestment zone under Chapter 312 for a 6.34 acre tract in the Commerce Center of Granbury for developer Jerry Durant to fund, design, and construct a 39,000 square foot concrete tilt-up industrial spec building for sale or for lease. After the reinvestment zone was approved, staff followed up with Chapter 312 protocols and advertised the project in the Hood County News for a required 30-day notice. What you have before you now is the tax abatement agreement that notice was required for. A copy of it is in your packet. The abatement basically comes down to 50% property tax abatement for a period of 7 years. The total project cost is estimated to be $5.9 million. This is a concrete tilt-up building. There's also a picture of a similar building that was constructed in Weatherford to give you an idea what the building will look like. The building can also be expanded to up to 104,000 square feet. And the pad for the construction is already in place. So basically, staff is recommending approval of the abatement agreement. The developer has approved the agreement as well, so I don't think there'll be much negotiation involved, with consent of the TERS board as well.
Mayor,
Yes.
so there's a pad already in place?
Yes, yes.
Who poured that? How long
It was
has it been
done
there?
in 2008.
2008, with the
Yes.
anticipation somebody was going to do something back then?
There was anticipation of a spec building project back then. It's a long time coming, but it's a continuation of that project,
Continuation of the project, okay. All right.
which didn't happen back then, but.
Gotcha, okay. Well, it's all good, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. LaCour? Mr. Ross, do you have comments?
I was just going to add, and I think Lance may have said it, the suggested action is to approve the tax abatement agreement and authorize city manager to negotiate and execute a final agreement with developers subject to the consent of the TERS board. Would be our complete recommendation. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions? I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone want to speak? I'm going to close the public hearing. Are there any other questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute the agreement with the consent of the TERS Board of Directors?
Mayor,
Mr. Vale?
make a motion to approve the tax abatement agreement for the Commerce Center at Granbury Speculative Building Project and authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute the agreement with the consent of the TERS Board of Directors.
Second.
Second by Mr. Corrigan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. This motion is passed 6-0. I'm now going to recess the Granbury City Council meeting into the TERS Increment Reinvestment Zone Board of Directors meeting. So the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone TERS Board of Directors meeting will convene at 8:01 p.m. Tuesday, February 6, 2024, 2024, and in Granbury City Hall, 116 West Bridge Street, Granbury, Texas. We have the first item is called to order. We are now in order. And number 2 is public comments on agenda items. Ms. Walker, do we have anyone that signed up? No one has signed up. So we have a deliberation agenda on consider adopting resolution number 2024-01, authorizing the city council to enter into a tax abatement agreement for Commerce Center of Granbury Speculative Building, Chapter 311.025, Section TERS Tax Abatement Agreements. Mr. Ross?
I'll introduce Lance LaCour if there's any follow-up questions, but this is just the second part of the same approval action by the TERS board, or this is what the TERS board's action that's needed.
We'd recommend approval of the resolution.
Right.
And thank you for putting the tax code section in here so that we can see that to be effective, an agreement to abate taxes on real property and a reinvestment zone must be approved by the board of directors of the reinvestment zone and the governing body of each taxing unit that imposes taxes on real property in the reinvestment zone. And that will be the city council, correct?
Yes, sir.
That is us as we sit here now as the TERS board. So do I hear a motion to adopt resolution number 24?
Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry, do you have a question?
Make a motion to adopt resolution number 2024-01, authorizing the city council to enter into a tax abatement agreement for Commerce Center of Granbury speculative building.
And I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Vale. Did we get all of the words correct? Okay, we're in good shape here. Discussion? No? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That will pass 6-0. I will now adjourn the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone TERS Board of Directors meeting. And we will proceed to
Reconvene city council.
we will reconvene into the city council meeting. It is now 8:05, February 6, 2024. We're still at Granbury City Hall, 116 West Bridge Street, Granbury, Texas. We'll now go to number 9. Citizen comments on matters not on the agenda. Ms. Walker, do we have anyone who signed up? We have no one that signed up. And I know that there's been a bunch of work over the last 3 days. Do we have any need for an executive session as per the attorney here? You don't need an executive session? Real property?
No,
Nope.
sir.
And nothing regarding economic development negotiations?
No, sir.
It's okay. We are finished with our business tonight, so we're going to adjourn. All good? All good.